Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Crystal Trevette, and I am here today conducting an oral history interview on August 30th, 2021. So I'm going to just start by asking your name. Can you tell me your full name and the year that you graduated?
My full name is Lynndolyn Tippins Mitchell, and I graduated from the University of California, Irvine in 1981.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you to learn a little bit more about who you are and about your UCI experience. So first off, I'd like to get a little bit of background about you. So where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I was born in Santa Ana, California, but I graduated from Inglewood High School in 1977. And right after high school, I started at the University of California, Irvine as a freshman.
Can you tell me about your high school experience? What was that like? Did you, for example, always have your eye on college, or did you have to think about it a little bit?
Well, actually, when I was a sophomore in college, I worked in a summer camp where a lot of the students were from UCLA or USC, and I was still in high school. And having the experience of having them as peer camp counselors, I said to myself, if they can go to college, I can too.
So that was when you were a sophomore in high school that you were at this camp.
Right.
And you said a lot of them went to university and they went to UCI or all around?
No, it was just most of them were either from UCLA, USC, and I think there was one counselor that had gone to Washington State. Um, so that was like a really close-up experience that kind of gave me some insight that college was in my future.
Mhm. Um, Growing up, what were you told about college in general?
Well, my mother, who basically was a single parent, actually went to college while we were very, very young. She got an associate's degree, but she worked full time and she went to college. I don't know if you've ever heard of Compton College. She went there in the 60s and she graduated in 1966. So she went part-time. So she always expected that my sister and I attend a college of some kind.
You have a sister who's older, younger. What's your sister's
She's
name?
older. Unfortunately, now she's deceased, but she went to Cal State Northridge and she majored in radio, TV, film, and she was very academically focused.
I'm sorry for your loss. Did you have other siblings?
No, she was my only sibling. I had a half sibling, but we didn't grow up together.
Okay. So let's backtrack. You went to high school, you were a counselor at a camp, and you had a mother. Well, at this camp, you learned from others about going to college, and your mother was going to college. Um, but how exactly did you come to choose the University of California, Irvine? How did you hear about UCI? Can you tell me a little bit about that story?
It's a really interesting story. So there's two parts to it. One part was there was a student by the name of Gregory White that was a recruiter. So he came to Inglewood High School and he pretty much, had people that were interested in going to college come to this presentation. And I believe at the time he may have been a junior at UC Irvine. And Gregory White pretty much said, if you want to go to college in the University of California system, you have to meet the A through F requirements, you have to have this GPA. And he looked like me. So I was like, oh, wow, if he can go, it's the same thing with the counselors. It kind of gave me hope that basically it was not out of the question for me. And then because my sister went to Cal State Northridge, I was kind of thinking maybe Northridge, maybe not. So my dad, who had a business in Orange County, said, "Why don't you go check out the campus?" So I went to the campus myself, and then I went to, I think it was at the time they called it um, special education opportunity program, SEOP. And I went to that office and I was, talking to them, and I told them I was really, really interested in being a student at UC Irvine. And they kind of gave me some pointers, in terms of how to apply. And I started that in motion.
That's really interesting. You tell me again, what was the name of the student that was speaking with you, the
Um,
recruiter?
his name was Gregory White, and he was
Gregory
a
White.
student. And I think what he did, a lot of times, and this was in the 70s, they sent students out to predominantly African American high schools
Mhm.
to recruit individuals to come to UC Irvine and give them information on what's necessary to meet the requirements. So I must have been a junior in high school that year, but his name was Gregory White, and I'm assuming he graduated ahead of me, but I'm not sure what year he graduated from UC Irvine.
But you came to visit the campus.
I did by myself. I took the
Oh,
self tour, so I was pretty motivated. So I came, I showed up on an afternoon. It was during my senior, I think it was the first semester of my senior year of high school. And then I, basically took the self tour. And then, as I said, I went to the um, special education opportunity program office. And I cannot remember, I want to say the guy's name was Mr. Gomez that ran the office back then. And I, basically walked in and said, I'm really interested in this school. How do you think I can get in?
what did he say?
He
Do you
said,
remember?
"Well, what are your grades like?" And my high school grades were not bad. I mean, I wasn't valedictorian, um, or in the top. How they graduate the top 10 students. I wasn't one of the top 10 students, but I was competitive. So he asked me about my grades, and then he basically asked me, what requirements for the program, the A through F requirements that I had met, and I had pretty much met all of them except for French. So I had to take a French class at a community college in order to meet the A through F requirements.
What did you think about the campus when you came to visit?
I immediately fell in love with the campus. I had not toured the campus before. As I indicated, my sister had gone to Northridge, so I'd been up there with her many times, and I'd been to Compton College with my mother, but I had never seen the campus of UC Irvine, and it was amazingly beautiful. It did not have as many buildings as they have now. Aldrich Park was still there, the Gateway Commons was still there and was there, but it was just such a beautiful campus. I just immediately fell in love with it.
What was your favorite part?
The part that I'm trying to think, I believe that I like the fact that the campus was outlaid with the park in the middle with class, buildings on the outskirts of it. And I don't know, I haven't been to the campus in a while, but there was an older building where they had the engineering students, and it was like the taller building on campus. And I really um, liked that building, and the architecture I thought was really great.
Did you get to talk to anyone other than Mr. Gomez?
I'm trying to remember, we're talking decades ago. I don't remember anyone but him. I know there was someone else in his office, but I can't remember her name.
So, did you have a first impression of the students yet, or not?
I
Not
did
yet.
not. I did
Okay.
not. I did not meet any students other than Gregory White that had come to my high school, and he was with another student, and I can't remember that student's name.
So you decided to apply after this visit. How was the application process?
It was very interesting because in 1976 and 77, it was like a common application. You could apply to one University of California campus and you could check off whatever school. So if you got into one school, you could get into the other, which is totally not the case right now. Um, so I basically filled out the application, and I believe I had to write an essay, provide my transcripts, and proof of where I was in my class. And believe it or not, University of California, Irvine was the only school I applied to. And
So
my
you're pretty
mother,
set.
she was, yeah, she was like, she said, "How can you do this? What's going to happen if you don't get in?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm getting in." I know that was pretty hubris of me, but I just didn't. I basically felt that it was where I wanted to go. I was going to do everything I could to get into the school and have that college experience at University of California, Irvine.
Wow. That's awesome. And you got to campus, and did your family bring you to campus?
Actually, as I indicated, I lived in Los Angeles County, specifically Inglewood, and my father lived in Santa Ana. So I actually came to campus before classes started for the summer orientation program. And before I got there, when I went to that program, that's when I met students
Oh,
from University of California, Irvine.
can you tell me more about the summer experience?
So the summer orientation program, I think they called it SPOP. And what happens is it's kind of like an orientation where students who are going to be incoming freshmen have an opportunity to come to the campus, participate in activities, see the commons where they call the place where the students have their meals. I can't remember the exact name of it. And so it's like an experience over a weekend. And I met students that were already um, enrolled and they were like sophomores. So they had just gone through the freshman experience. So they were representatives.
What did you think of the students?
I was totally impressed because a lot of the students were African American, women like myself, and they were very open and very willing to help me understand, how to succeed in college. They even sat down and helped me pick my first semester courses, which I thought was amazing. Um, I think without them, my college experience would have been extremely different. So
Do
I don't
you,
know if you know Dr. Valerie Samuel. She's a student that graduated from University of California, Irvine in 1975. And Cheryl Elston, I think she may have graduated the same year. Those are the students that actually took me under their wing and tried to um, get me to focus on how to succeed my first year.
what tips did they offer?
Well, in terms of classes, they suggested the first quarter, since we were on the quarter system, to take only 12 credits as opposed to 15 or 18, and basically take an easy class with a hard class, and basically get my prerequisites out of the way the first year, which was very helpful.
Did you also meet Jackie Lacey?
I did. Now, she basically was a student that I looked up to. She ended up becoming the district attorney for Los Angeles County. So I met her um, around the time that I started at University of California, Irvine, but I don't think that she was actually the one that helped me pick all my classes.
Mm.
But she was a role model.
Um, So you picked your classes. Did you already know what you wanted to major in, or how did you come to make the decision about your major, and what was that?
It was suggested when I came on my first visit and met Mr. Gomez, Manuel Gomez, and he suggested, maybe social ecology might be a good way for you to serve the community when you graduate. And so that's how I chose that major. And most of the students that helped me pick my classes were social ecology majors as well.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what social ecology was like when you were a major? What was the focus? How did it shape your overall experience at UCI?
Well, it was interdisciplinary and it basically was a program at that time. It was not a school of social ecology, so it was pretty small, it was pretty new, and all the professors that were involved were very, very focused on giving students an opportunity to be an interdisciplinary um, professional once they graduated. So the classes were pretty much outlined in such a way that anybody that majored in social ecology could either go into law, they could go into teaching, they could go into urban planning, or basically get a master's or a PhD in the area. And I'm not sure if they offered a PhD when I was there, but I do know that they had a master's program.
Did you have a faculty member, a lecturer that was really important or influential in social ecology or in general?
Well, Professor Ray Catalano in the discipline of social ecology was very good. He was very knowledgeable, and I always remember I wasn't very traveled as a person when I started college, but he always used to talk about Chicago and how they started urban planning and how it was actually the main area in which they started urban planning and a program like social ecology. So he kind of gave us word pictures. He wasn't necessarily a an easy professor, but he was very knowledgeable, and I enjoyed taking a couple of classes from him.
Are there other classes or individuals in social ecology or in UCI in general that were influential, maybe in student affairs?
Well, there was Professor Joe White, he's basically taught a lot of African American history classes, like juvenile. It wasn't necessarily juvenile law, but he basically taught courses from a more African American perspective. And I took a couple of classes with him. He was very engaging, very encouraging. And I don't think he's with us anymore, but he was influential to me as a professor and him being a professor of color. And I think I also took a couple of courses with Dr. Mitchell and Mrs. Mitchell, his wife. Um, and it's been so many years, I can't name the specific course, but I try to make my experience as diverse as possible. And as a social ecology major, you could take courses in your major, and you could also take courses in science, you could take courses in sociology or psychology. So it was really an interdisciplinary process of getting my degree.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, Dr. Joe White was someone that comes up in a number of people's memories when they think about UCI in the early years. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about just the campus climate, what it was like to go to school during the 70s, late 70s. Um, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I did live in the dorms, which was very helpful. I lived in Mesa Court, and the dorm that I lived in, Mariposa at the time, was an all-female dorm. and there were 8 African American women who lived in the dorm that were freshmen, and a lot of them I'm still in contact with. And it was like we were a family. We basically, checked in with each other. We helped each other. I think I was one of the original Uber drivers because when people had night classes, because I had a car, I would drive them to the class across from Mesa Court, just for security purposes. Also, I felt that the community of African American students was really close knit. It wasn't that you didn't associate with students who weren't African American, because my roommate was not, and none of the eight out of the 8 women in our dorm, there were only 2 that were roommates together. Everybody else had a roommate that was different. So that was an interesting experience. But I think the camaraderie, the closeness, the supportiveness, and just um, it seems like we were fearless in terms of what we wanted to do. And, there were times where students may have made comments that were not appropriate, but we were so focused on getting through the process that we didn't let it stop us.
Can I ask for just a little bit more details about, how you encouraged each other during your college years?
So I think the freshman year was the most important year because living in an all-female dorm, we didn't have a lot of distractions, but we would have study groups. Sometimes we go to the library, or if somebody had a class that was more difficult, we would let the other person know, this class I just took Principles of Social Ecology. It wasn't very easy. This is what I did. This is how I passed. Um, Now, our sophomore year, we lived in a different setting, so it was a more co-ed setting. And I have to say, my sophomore year was a little less focused than my freshman year because my perspective was I'd already made it through one year, so I kind of relaxed a little bit. So I wasn't as serious in terms of extracurricular activities or what I could get involved in.
Um, but you did get involved in some activities, right?
Right. So after my freshman year, I was a representative on the student parent orientation program. I actually got involved in education motivation, where we went out in the community and taught science to elementary school children. I was involved in Brothers and Sisters in Christ, where we would go to the orphanages on the weekends to basically read and talk to children who were Spanish speaking, obviously, in Tijuana. And then my um, junior year, I was a resident assistant for Sierra Dorm, which is the dorm that had the dorm class. And that was really a challenging experience.
What made it challenging?
Well, it was so first of all, as a resident assistant for Sierra Dorm, not only were you a resident assistant, but you were required to be like a teacher's assistant for the dorm class. So you had to write in your journal, you had to read the journals of the other students. You also had to go, I had to go for a weekend called Simulated Society, where we pretended to be in a society where they put the more aggressive people as being less powerful, and then the people that they felt were more aggressive, they flip-flopped the roles. So it was a very, very intense um, situation. And during the 70s, Sierra and Lago, it was an experiment. It was a dorm experiment. So Lago was a freshman dorm, which one of my friends from my freshman year was our resident assistant of. And then Sierra was a dorm that I was a resident assistant, and they had a dorm class. And what happened is the professor that was running the dorm class, he was doing an experiment on what happens when a freshman comes to college where there's no structure as opposed to structure. And in Sierra, they made a conscious effort to recruit students who were Asian, who were white, who were African American. So they had a very cross section of the community so people could understand cultures and how cultures operate and understand people who were not like them.
Can you tell me a little bit about the demographics of the campus at that time and um, how this worked in terms of um, connecting with people of different cultures through your dorm or in your classes? What was the student body like?
So the student body, when I was there, it's my understanding between 1975 and 1979, University of California, Irvine took a very, very serious approach at trying to recruit students of color. And so I would say in Mesa Court housing, there had to be about 100 um, students that were of color, and I mean African American, and then in Middle Earth, the same thing. Those were the two student housings, and they also had Verano Place, but those were married students. So there were a large number of African American students during those years. It's my understanding after that, the population dwindled somewhat. I couldn't give you specific statistics, but it was my understanding during those 3 years, University of California, Irvine had more African American students than they might have even today.
How did that feel on campus in terms of walking around and being part of the campus? Did you feel the connection, or in another way of phrasing this was how was the Black community? How did you feel the connection with the Black community, if at all?
Well, they had the Cross Cultural Center, which a lot of students would actually spend time there. They had activities at the Cross Cultural Center. They also had dorm parties where it was really interesting because it was kind of like lobbying to try to get certain music if it was a dorm where people like different kind of music. So it was comforting to know that people looked like me and they all had aspirations to do something better with their lives. And some students were first generation college students, me being actually aside from my sister, first generation 4 year college in my immediate family. So I think a lot of people were like that. And it was very encouraging to know that we had that connection. And then they initiated Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority first on campus. And then um, one of my sorority sisters in Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated started the Delta Sigma Theta campus sorority. And it was really interesting because when she went to the Cross Cultural Center and said, "Hey, I want to start Delta Sigma Theta," she had initiated at another chapter, a citywide chapter in Los Angeles. And they said, "Oh, no, we already have a Black sorority. We don't need another one." And that was in the 70s, which was kind of interesting. But out of the initiates that started the charter at Irvine, UC Irvine for Delta Sigma Theta, two of the women that were charter members were in my freshman dorm. One of the women that was a charter member that was in my freshman dorm had actually initiated at another campus or at another chapter. And then four of us from um, our dorm actually were on the first line. So out of all the African American women who were in that freshman dorm, out of eight, seven became members of Delta Sigma Theta. So I guess it was kind of like um, I guess we had that sisterhood camaraderie thing going on even before we became sorority sisters.
How did you become interested in this sorority? What made you encourage you to join?
Well, I was approached, so of course you had to have a certain grade point average. And basically, it was actually my senior year, which is kind of unique. And I was approached by some of my um, colleagues who had already been through the process as either charter members or with the citywide chapter, and I was already their friend. And they said, "So are you interested?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm interested." So I went ahead and initiated my senior year.
So it sounds like you were pretty active on campus, outside the classroom. How did these affiliations have an effect on your relationship with the university, with your overall experience here, and even moving beyond UCI?
Well, the experiences of being involved were very positive. I think that if I had not been active in orientation programs or in sororities or even as a resident assistant at the dorms, I don't think my experience would have been the same. I believe being active and also being academically focused, helped me decide how I was going to fashion my career after graduation.
So, what would you say was maybe your fondest memory of your time at UCI?
Oh, that's kind of a challenging one, but I guess I would say one of the fondest memories that I had at UC Irvine was my freshman year when I was able to live in a freshman dorm and I met 7 other women who were very focused, very fearless, and um, very committed to becoming um, I guess, graduates in terms of graduating from University of California, Irvine, and from going to continuing their education afterwards. I think that was a foundation that I never really realized. I mean, that was the core, and that was the fondest memory living in an all-female freshman dorm my first year, which was very unique.
Were there particular challenges that you experienced at UCI that you overcame?
Well, it was really important to be a good writer, and I was very afraid of actually taking the writing course that was required at the time. I believe it was Writing 1A. And I was very concerned because I had gone to a high school, which was a public high school, which was considered predominantly African American. And there was a stigma that the writing in my high school was not as good as the writing at University of California, Irvine. So when I took the writing class, I actually got a tutor and worked really, really hard to hone in on my writing skills so that not only that I could graduate because it was a requirement, but also use it in my profession ultimately. And I ended up taking expository writing after that. And it was not as challenging because of the core class that I'd had with Writing 1A. And also logic was very challenging because I was never really that good in math. So I took logic and that was a very challenging course.
So you overcame some academic challenges. Were there social challenges that you overcame?
Well, I would say being able to actually not only continue the friendships that I started when I got there, but also becoming a mentor for students that were behind me. And I tried to make an effort to give back to the students that were underclassmen when I was an upperclassman, and basically do the same for them that was done for me in order to succeed. So we actually, our freshman year, we went to Washington High School to recruit from that school. And it was funny because we were freshmen. And so we had gone and we facilitated a session that morning. And then we left to go to lunch. And we came back, they thought we were students. So they're like, "Where's your ID?" So they were basically trying to make us prove that we were not students so they could let us in. And we said, "Hey, we're here recruiting." So that was very, very um, important to me, to try to go out into the community and bring students to University of California, Irvine, and let them know that they can do what we did. And actually, five of those students that we spoke to that day ended up enrolling in UC Irvine, and they did very well.
Do you remember their names?
Yeah, one is Rod Seamster, who's now a medical doctor, Theodore Burnett, who's now a DDS, and then there was Lloyd Lee, who's now a medical doctor, and then there's Elton. I haven't had much contact with Elton, so I'm not sure what he ended up doing.
Thank you for that, and for bringing up.
And Darlene Futrell, who became a gospel singer.
Oh, okay. um, um, it's really encouraging to hear about how you wanted to pay it forward, so to speak,
Right, absolutely.
with future students at UCI. And I don't know, how familiar are you, if at all, with the UCI Black Thriving Initiative?
Can you say that again?
The UCI Black Thriving Initiative?
Black Thriving Initiative. I have not heard of that. I've heard of the Alumni Association, but not the Black Thriving Initiative.
Oh, okay. So UCI, with Vice Chancellor Douglas Haynes at the lead, has been committed to creating a whole university approach to creating a university culture where Black people can thrive,
Oh,
and really thinking about how to change or encourage a culture in which Black people succeed at the university, and to engage the community, the Black community, both on and off campus. So, in hearing your story about the your friends that you had on campus, that it was the seven of you in the dorm kind of encouraging each other and supporting each other through the 4 years that you were at UCI, and then you again thinking about and working purposefully to encourage other students to join UCI. I think people would be really curious to know, while you were at UCI, what was in place from your perspective that helped you to thrive.
I think there was an encouragement to get involved in the community around us and to get involved in the community of the University of California, Irvine. And I think that if I had just gone through 4 years and just focused on academics only and not been involved, I think it would have been a totally different experience. And the professors like Professor Joe White, the upper class students when I was a freshman, and the students who were in my class or even behind me, all had the opportunity where they wanted to embrace the environment. And I think that's what's important, because certain things that I did, if I had not been approached or if I had not seen others, years ahead of me doing the same thing, I wouldn't have known that that was what to do. So I can see how the program that you mentioned is very positive and it's very important.
You've mentioned now a couple of times your involvement in the greater community in Orange County. And I wonder if you can tell me just a little bit more about that and how that was part of your overall experience.
So during I want to say my senior year, there was something called Saturday School. So the students from certain communities in Orange County would come to the campus on Saturday, and my section was the writing section where we would teach them how to write essays. We would correct their essays. And I think Paula Parks um, was one, she's also a PhD. She was one of the instructors for writing. And the other instructor, I cannot pronounce his name, but he became a very famous poet. He's listed as one of UC Irvine's famous individuals. And unfortunately, I cannot pronounce his name, but he was one of the Saturday school instructors as well. And that was very rewarding. We did different activities with the students. We gave them a chance to understand what college was like, what was it like to do well in school, what you needed to do, what the tools were to learn. So that was very rewarding.
If we can switch gears a little bit and talk about how UCI has impacted who you've become. Can you tell me what your journey was like after UCI? What did you choose to do? Um, and who are you today?
So immediately after graduating from the University of California, Irvine, I enrolled in law school in DC, in the District of Columbia, and my roommate for law school all 3 years, um, Sharon Bilbruth, went to Howard. I went to Antioch. So I actually completed law school, and I think the foundation I got at UC Irvine really helped me succeed, especially in the writing curriculum for law school. And then after law school, I returned to California. I practiced in um, California for about, I want to say like 3 or 4 years, and then about 5 years. And then I ended up moving to the East Coast because my husband, who did not go to University of California, Irvine, was a JAG. That's a he was in the Judge Advocate Corps for the United States Navy. So we moved around quite a bit, but I believe that the diverse exposure that I had at UC University of California, Irvine kind of gave me the ability to become a good attorney and be able to practice in different jurisdictions. And now I have my own law firm, and I, help families, I help juveniles, I help students who have academic challenges by appearing at um, special education IEP meetings. So I believe that Irvine was a foundation for me. It was like blooming where I was planted.
Thank you for sharing that. You said that UCI really prepared you in a variety of ways. Is there, could you expand on that just a little bit more? You talked about working with the variety of people, diversity of people. Are there other ways that UCI really shaped your perspective or approach to your career or to your home life?
Well, in terms of career, my senior year, I had to do an internship at the Legal Aid Society of Orange County, and that was a year-long internship. So that exposed me to the legal profession while I was still an undergraduate student. And I also believe that going to University of California, Irvine helped me um, relate to other people who were the same or different. than I was. And I think it gave me the ability to recognize challenges and go through them. You know, I can look back on my college experience and see it as the foundation for everything I've done thus far in my life.
Thank you. If you could describe your UCI experience in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? I'm putting you on the spot.
I would say extremely rewarding.
Okay, extremely rewarding. Um, and I've been asking you so many questions. I want to know if there's anything that you'd like to add. Is there anything additional you'd like to discuss or talk about?
Well, actually, one thing that I have noticed, and I mentioned this earlier about the University of California, Irvine as it stands today, I see it as if it's not as diverse in terms of people of color that are African American, and I would like to try to figure out how Irvine can connect to people in the inner city, in the communities, just like they connected to me back in the 70s to say, hey, you can do this too. You can be a student at University of California, Irvine. You can actually succeed. And I think in order to do this, people have to go back to and make a connection to people that are younger than high school. Because once you get in high school, if you have not had the foundation in terms of the requirements or the grade point average to be competitive to get into a school like um, UC Irvine, it's just not possible. So, what I would like to see is the university make more of an effort to connect with students who are in elementary school, who are in middle school, and say, there's this campus um, that's part of the University of California where you can succeed, but this is what you need to do.
Hmm. If you have had the opportunity to speak with either prospective students who are thinking about UCI or students who are already here about um, how to navigate the university um, and to, you know, come out of the university with um, skills and um, knowledge that could help them, you know, beyond this place, right? Beyond UCI. What kind of advice would you give? What would you tell them?
I would first of all tell them to make sure that not only that they have a strong academic foundation in their college experience, whether it's 4 years or 5 years, but to also make social connections and make personal connections with people who can help you along the way because it is a um, process of going through college, not just focusing on your academic future, but it's also a social experience. And to seek out people who look like them or who may not look like them and try to glean from them what opportunities may be available that they can share and that they can grow from.
Thank you so much, Lynndolyn. Any other final comments or stories you'd like to share
The only
before
thing
we
I can
close?
say is I have no regrets that I chose the University of California, Irvine. And I'm not just saying this because, I happened to choose it as my only university that I was going to. I will say that I believe that I made the right choice, and I think it did give me the foundation and made me who I am today.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your UCI story with us. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to sharing the video with you
Okay.
at the end of the of this program, this initiative.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak about my experience at UC Irvine.